Langen. So it would be, okay, we just went live. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out StreamYard a little bit myself. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is the original Scary Ammi, and we're back for a Thursday night in Pakistan, morning in Canada. Talks with Kim Langen, who is the CEO of Spirit of Math and is truly a global educationist in terms of her experience and perspective. So, hi, Kim, and welcome back.
Hello, and it's great to be here. How is everyone there? How are things there?
It's becoming really cold, but what we feel is cold, nowhere near what it's like in Canada. But because we don't have central heating, so I think we feel the cold like a lot. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, yes. I've been there during that time, and it can, at least you get some warmth in the daytime, but it does get really cold, especially with all the concrete homes that you have there. So, yeah.
Yeah. But the one thing I miss in the winters is central heating. So that is such a luxury. I think our newer homes are trying to put that in, but like the 99% of homes don't have it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that
you
makes
guys
sense.
are coming up on Christmas. Is it all merry and fun or not so much given that this is COVID?
Well, it's an interesting year, fascinating year, because people are, we can't go out much. We can't really have anyone over, not even extended families. So we're having to do Christmas distant from others, which makes it very, yeah, it makes it a little tough for people, but I think people are being pretty good here. There's a lot of, I've noticed there's a lot more Christmas lights out, and our Christmas lights are like, for many people out there who are from Pakistan, it's sort of like your wedding lights. And you know how you have
Yes.
all the lights
Oh
all
my
over.
God. I love Christmas lights. I love them. So in the United States, I used to love just going, just like going out to different houses to see the lights. So do you guys have like beautiful lights in Canada also?
Oh yes, yeah, lots of them. And I can remember when I was growing up, we used to go around and go on, like when it came close to Christmas, we would go out as a family in the car and we would go around to all the places where we knew all the really nice lights were. So it was, yeah, it's a big thing. It's a big thing here. And I'm finding that this year again, there seems to be more lights than other years, which is interesting because it's showing that people are maybe at home a little bit more. I'm not too sure. So just thought
Yeah.
I'd mention that. And people are spending more time dressing up their homes. We also have, at Halloween time and Thanksgiving time, people here will also dress up their houses with Halloween things. And then, and then when I was young and when Thanksgiving was around, there'd be a lot of pumpkins and
On
different things
Thanksgiving,
outside.
they put out pumpkins.
Sorry, what's that?
I'm saying they put out pumpkins on Halloween, right? But do they also put them out on Thanksgiving?
Well, but they weren't carved. On Halloween, they're all carved and they have faces or they have other things as well. And I think maybe, next time, once, Halloween comes around again, it'd be neat to show some pictures. My brother-in-law really gets into it. And, like each year he has a theme. And one year he had Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So he actually cut out into these pumpkins all the seven dwarfs and then Snow White, and you could see their different faces, and they had to guess which one was which. Sleepy, Dopey, and so all the kids would come around to actually just go and see, okay, what does he have this year? And he would always have a different theme. So it's fun. Some people really have fun with it, and then not everyone, but it certainly is. It sort of changes up things, and I think as much as anything else, just having celebrations helps us all just change up things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's just one way to stay happy at a year that hasn't been particularly happy for a lot of people. Two of our own Scary Ammi members have their parents in like ICUs right now. So and the second wave has actually hit Pakistan a lot worse than the first wave, maybe because our hospitals are getting overwhelmed. So the second wave is really hitting people like in a bad way.
We're finding that the same here in Canada, and it's the numbers are going up much higher. And they're saying it's because we are testing more, but the hospitals are a lot in a tougher situation now, and they're all saying this. And what's happening, I think the fallout isn't just the people in the hospital with COVID. It is also the fact that other people aren't able to get in to have necessary surgery, and because there's no beds left. And so I know for cancer, listening to a cancer doctor, he was saying that we may see something 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year down the way, where we'll all of a sudden have a real spike of very serious cases in cancer. So this is why right now, this is why they're saying to everyone, please, please, take care of yourself, stay away, and yeah, and so it's just a major deal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Kim, today's topic is mental health and nutrition and how these factors affect learning outcomes. So, I thought it was a really interesting topic because we talk about mental health. We talk about nutrition and mental health all the time in Scary Ammi, but we've never linked it to learning outcomes. So I thought that was really interesting. Kalsoom has a question. I don't know if you want to answer it now or later. She's saying, do you think the moods of children are affected by the weather?
Okay, it's a good question for sure. Yes, I mean we all feel it, and the kids are going to feel it too. When you've got sun, you feel better. It stimulates your eyes. The sun actually goes in and actually stimulates the hormones, and a whole bunch of things happen in our brains when the sun is out. And if it's down, it can, we all feel sleepy too. So kids are just like us. And if it's rainy out, yes, it definitely. The other thing that you have to remember too is if you have high barometer ratings and low, and when a big storm is coming in, some kids will get real headaches, just like adults will, and they may feel like a little off. And they've got a lot of data that shows that weather is a huge impact. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We have another interesting question. Do you think Muslims should celebrate all occasions? So this was actually a debate on Scary Ammi because we are running a drive to collect gifts for Christians because the Christians in Pakistan are traditionally like from poorer communities. We're doing a drive. And there were mothers who felt that, it's not a good idea to celebrate Christmas because it dilutes the impact of your own religion. So I'm sure with you guys, the question is it a good idea to mark Eid? Because, would Eid dilute? So since Canada is so multicultural, Pakistan is not. And what is a good way to bring up children? Should we celebrate everything like Hanukkah, Thanksgiving, Christmas? Or should we really focus on our own religion and be tolerant of others?
That's quite the question.
It's a huge question in Pakistan. Like,
let me tell you what happens here in Canada. In the schools, all the celebrations are valued, and we definitely don't say one's more important than the other. Okay, and I think that's in our culture. We make sure that that's understood. And I think for you as a person, well, I personally, understanding others is critically important, and having some spirituality is important. So it's that acceptance of each other, that we understand this in different ways. And what we believe to be very, very important is deep within us. And how we do it is very individual too. How we speak to God, how we interact with God, how we understand God, and our spiritual sense. If you don't believe in God, is very I'm not too sure we can, I can say one way is better than another. And that's why I'm being a little careful about this one. Um, I do think, though, there are some in different areas of the world, different religions are persecuted more than other areas, or they're not supported, or they are not, yeah, they're not in as good a situation. So we have to watch. Humanity is humanity. And when we help others, we become stronger ourselves too, and we become better people ourselves. And to demonstrate that to kids is critically important. And to show that it is about, we're all living in this world together. How do we do it? And it's not always easy. A lot of times it's not easy. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. So should we first go to your PowerPoint and then come to the questions?
Yes, let's do that. And I saw a question pop up, but let's go to the PowerPoint. And then what we can do is we'll come back to all these questions, okay?
Sure.
So what we wanted to talk about today was diet and learning outcomes. So, which is interesting because you said that that diet affects them, but it's actually affecting learning outcomes too. And I wanted to start by saying that when you are prepared to learn, you do your homework. We know that. Kids are ready to learn. They do their homework. They know what to ask for clarification. So if they've done their homework, they can go in and say, I wasn't too sure about something. Or even during class, they know to ask as well. They know when you're prepared to learn, you bring your materials, pens, pencil, paper, books. If it's anything to do with science, you bring your science equipment and so on. So that's, we think of that, we know that. And those are external as well as the dressing appropriately. You come to school so that if it's hot out, you don't dress with your coats on and so on, so that you're feeling comfortable and you can focus. If it's really cold, you wear warmer clothes. That's being prepared to learn. And then the other thing that often people don't think about is eating well. And that if you eat well, you are prepared to learn. Because if you don't eat well, you're going to have a hard time just with some of the basics. So I wanted to bring this in as the first thing. And it's not just you're going to feel good. You actually can't learn as well if you don't have good nutrition. So, so I'm going to talk about what the effect is. If you've got a healthy brain, you don't have absences and you don't have bad behavior. So if you eat well, you're healthier. If you're healthier, you have less absences because you're not getting sick as much. So even this itself, many people aren't, they're not sort of associating with, oh, like I'm actually going to be at school more. If you're at school more, you have better marks because you have the ability to learn with everybody at the same time and you're not missing everything. If you're healthier, you have a well-functioning brain. And that's why I've got this brain here, because it is about that. And if you have a well-functioning brain, you have good behavior. And from studies from the UK even show that there's better moods. When you have better moods, you have good behavior. So it's absences. Eating poorly can cause a lot more absences, and also eating poorly can cause bad behavior because of the mood swings. And a child cannot help that. And if you're having the bad absences, you're not going to learn as well. If you're having bad behavior, you can't focus, which is what we're going to talk about too. Okay, so there's our focus. And this University of Virginia's Curry School of Education, they did several studies over several years and all throughout the United States to find out why is it hard to focus when you are hungry. Everyone knows it's hard to focus. We all have that focus issue when we are hungry. And we all know that our brain needs food, but when they were looking at it for children, they looked at different angles. And I'm going to just talk about that. The first angle that they looked at, which I thought was very interesting, was this idea of food insecurity. Now, food insecurity, what that means is I'm scared I'm not going to get enough food. Okay. So if a child who is experiencing food insecurity in early childhood, and when they start kindergarten, they are more likely to start less ready than children from homes that are food secure. It's not even, are you getting the food and what's it doing to your body? It's even about just their insecurity and their mental health. So food, that should have been food, not feed. Food insecurity, infancy, and toddlerhood predicted lower cognitive and social emotional skills in kindergarten, which I thought was very interesting because it's so this is the reports from teachers throughout America. They looked at all of the mix of math and reading skills and skills such as curiosity and self-control. And they also looked at the long-term effects because these children did not have the math and reading test scores that the other kids did. They did not have the same kind of curiosity and self-control that other kids had. And that was simply because they were feeling insecure about not getting enough food. So that's huge. And I think for all of us, we have to, even if any of you out there are having difficulty getting enough food, you need to somehow show the children that, you know what, you've got enough, especially when they're quite young, so that they're feeling secure with you. So I wanted to mention this because it's often left unlooked at. And it's a little different. So when we're looking at looking at good food for kids, it is about nutrient-dense food. So the first thing is that students can't just pull out some food whenever they want at school, and many students who just don't have access to food at home don't have the nutrient-dense food when they need it. So you need to substitute. So think about instead of having more food, think about substituting and replacing it with nutrient-dense food. It's not about the amount of food, it's about the quality of food. And especially if you're really concerned about being able to pay for enough food for a large family. So think about how you can condense it. And then that will last longer in your body, it will have greater effects. And then people won't get as hungry as fast because it's nutrient dense. So what you can do with that is increase the amount of dietary fiber. So you use whole grains. So instead of white bread, you use whole grain bread. Like what do you call the whole grain like bread?
Brown bread.
Okay, brown bread is one that you can have. Yes. And in Canada, I know we've got a whole bunch of different grains. You can go and choose the different kinds of grains that you want. But this is important that you've got the whole grains, so fruits, vegetables, or proteins. Okay, find different ways to get that protein in. Legumes have a lot of proteins. So that's something to look at. So let's look at brain food. These are all the brain foods. Iron and zinc, which you can get from nuts, beans, green vegetables, bread and breakfast cereals, and red meat. Oftentimes, when people are thinking of iron, they think of just red meat.
Yeah.
It's not too good to have too much red meat, especially if it isn't grass-fed. And a lot of beef these days, when the cows, especially I know in Canada during the winter time, they're not put out to pasture. So they don't have the grass-fed. And what happens when they go out and they're eating the grass-fed, they have omega-3 fatty acids. And when they're eating the non-grass-fed food, like all the other things that they feed the cows, they get the omega-6, which is not good for our bodies. So this is why it's so important to watch that too for your kids as well. So magnesium is extremely important. Green vegetables, iodine, fish, mild milk, that should be yogurt, eggs, vitamin D, B vitamins, and omega-3 fatty acids. So look for your oily fishes, your walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, leafy green vegetables, rapeseed oil, and dietary fiber from plant-based foods. So the way, like when you look at this looks like, oh my goodness, I have to remember this, I have to remember that, and all this other stuff. One of the ways that I did it when I still do, and when my children were really, really young and babies, I was wondering, which do I first start feeding them? And I was really wondering what to do. And I thought, well, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have different colors. So I ensured that they had the red, the orange, maybe some yellow, some white, some greens, um, every day. So that I knew that if I had, so I could have some carrots, I could have some squash, or maybe some lettuce, some green beans, lentils. What are all the colors for my child? And in one day, I ensured that they had all these colors. And it was interesting because I thought, well, I'm not too sure how else to do this, but I felt that was the healthiest way to do it. And when I took my eldest Nathan, when he was a small infant, I took him um, to see a pediatrician for something, and the pediatrician came in, a specialist, and he took one look at Nathan, and he turned to all, and he had all these other people who are learning to be doctors that were following him, residents, and he turned to them and he said, "You see the difference?" And I thought, what are they talking about? And then they started talking amongst themselves about a child that they had just seen in the other room. And before they started talking about the child in the other room, he said to me, "What do you feed him?" And I thought, oh, well, and I had to explain, well, I make sure I've got the reds, the oranges, the greens, the yellows, the whites, I just feed him whatever so that he's got all these different colors and all these nutrients going into him. And the doctor kind of smiled. He turned and talked to the other people and he said, "You see the difference between this child and the child that we just saw?" And he said, "This child is the food that he's eating." And he said, "Look at the color of his skin." And Nathan had really good coloring in his skin. And when they talked about the child from before, they said the problem with that child is that the mother was feeding them Coke as the main source of food for this child, and sweets. And major problems, I guess, with this other child. They didn't want to say too much, but they were all like, oh, wow, what a difference, a massive difference. And it's important that you understand this. Like, I would never give Coke to my child, like to an infant. It's just, to me, it was like, whoa, why would you do that? Because there's so many
Yeah.
chemicals in there.
Till what age would you like never give Coke? So I never, like I gave up Diet Coke myself when Kian was born. But the minute birthdays began, there was Coke. And I feel so strongly about this. A kid's birthdays should not have Cokes and Fantas and all. But um, till what age did your children just not have Coke? And how do you manage birthdays then? Because the birthdays have Cokes.
Yes, in Pakistan, it is so prevalent there, and there's no other options. And I know oftentimes we'll go out for dinner, and and that's all you would have is a choice of pops and some water. And for me, it just, when you don't introduce it when they're young, they're not craving it. And they actually don't like too much sugar. And we're going to talk about sugar afterwards. But I don't like introducing it. I'd be very careful when they're young. And there's more and more research. Have something else. Have some good juices out for the kids. Replace it. They don't have to have Coke. If kids asking for Coke, you could say, actually, we don't have Coke here. This is what we have instead. And it's I know that even when my children were young, that was unusual. And it's become much more a norm to say, instead of Coke, here's something else now. So it's really up to you as a parent to say, no, we don't want that. So I wouldn't be introducing this as a normal food. They'll get it when they go out to other people's houses anyway, and they'll come back and they know what's expected in your home. It's just the way it is. I don't like it for any children. And in fact, they've taken out all pop from our schools here. They won't allow it in the schools anymore here. So I don't know there, but here they just won't. So it's just something to know.
Yeah, I'm really against Coke. Like I just can't see a child having it. But it's a huge issue at birthdays. Like I really wish they would just serve water at birthdays. If there's no other option, serve water. But
There should be water served as well. So that should definitely be there. And if you need to, take your own bottle of water for your child. And some children actually don't want the Coke, and they understand that it can affect them. So they're looking for something else, but there's no other alternative. That's puts children in a difficult situation if they don't want to have that pop. So it's good. I think it's good for everybody to have a bottle of water, a couple of bottles of water on the side, and then if children want to choose that, in fact, encourage them. They don't need the Coke. Okay. Yeah. The other thing with Coke, with Diet Coke, what they put in instead of the sugar is the same as they use for rat poison. And it actually, they even have, so it's so bad for your brain. It's even worse than sugar for your brain. And they actually have even shown, studies have shown that it actually increases weight. It doesn't decrease weight. And the reason why it increases weight is because it affects your brain so much that your brain feels it needs to eat constantly. So you actually eat more than what you really need to. So there's a lot with that, and that's a whole other topic. Okay, so I just wanted to say that iron deficiency, even in early stages of child development, can decrease dopamine transmission. Dopamine is the chemical that goes between your neurons in your brain. So that will impact your cognition, how smart you are. And so, it's important to really watch out for the different types of brain food. Deficiencies in vitamins and minerals, specifically all these that I mentioned here, zinc, are shown to inhibit cognitive abilities and mental concentration. So again, go back to all these good foods and you will be ready for school and ready for learning. Okay, so let's look at vitamin D and omega-3 because this is a big one coming like right now. So vitamin D and omega-3 supplements can help with mood or attention in some vulnerable children. Like it's very important. So this is Association of UK Dietitians have done a lot of research in this, and they've shown a direct correlation with ADHD, irritability, and autism. They've shown that there's when you have the omega-3 and vitamin D, it improves mood and it reduces anxiety. I put this ADHD in here because we've talked about ADD and ADHD before, and I thought this is really important. So if your child has that, go and find omega-3 tablets even, get them outside in that sun. And when it's smoggy or foggy, it's really hard to get as much sun. So you're going to need to give them some supplements. So the oily fish is good source of omega-3, and I gave you some other ones back there too. So keep that up, please. Okay. So eating regularly is another thing that affects children and their ability to learn. So eating regularly helps to regulate blood sugar. And blood influences some of the hormones that control our mood and ability to concentrate. So this does not mean eating sugary things. It means give that long-lasting types of sugar that your brain needs. And protein is a much more long-lasting type of food that your brain needs. So if you eat regularly, then it regulates the mood, and it also allows you to have the kids the ability to keep going. So imagine a child who isn't eating regularly. They're at school. They're not going to learn as well. Their learning outcome will be down. Their scores will be down. No question. It just will be. Okay. It's not about whether they're studying harder or not. It does come back to this as well. You can study as much as you want, but if you don't have that food good food that's coming in regularly, is going to have problems. I thought I'd just talk about food intolerances really quickly because if your child has food intolerances, that could be affecting their behavior and mood. And it can also produce physical symptoms too. So for some people, they could have joint pain. Could be just caused by inflammation, or the inflammation is just inflammation. It could be that their stomach is upset a lot. It could be that they just feel down all the time. So and feeling down, they get more tired. And so if you're feeling tired, and you're noticing these moods and these behaviors changing, look at the food. It could be just that. I know that a lot of people right now, and I'm talking to different people who are adults and even teenagers, and they're finding that sugar causes anxiety for a lot of kids, and it's huge problems. And so there's the behavior and mood. So they can't study much because they're too anxious. And with this COVID, it certainly isn't helping. So that food intolerance is really important. It could be gluten intolerance. And do you know, by the way, do you know anything do you know why this gluten intolerance has all of a sudden become a major deal? Are you aware of this?
No, but we do talk about gluten. We talk about lactose intolerance a lot, and there's even a milk now in Pakistan called lactogen, which is for children who are lactogen intolerant. But no, I don't know why it's suddenly become an issue, and it wasn't an
Okay.
issue
Yeah.
20 years.
So with milk, I'm just going to say also, if you look for A2 milk, then that's also sometimes it's not lactose that the kids are intolerant to. You think it is, but it's actually the type. There's just you can actually have this A2 milk, which actually has different types of proteins, and so I'm not going to go into too much detail with this. But for the gluten, what the issue is all these modified foods, these genetically modified foods. What they've done is, because they've increased the amount of food per plant, basically, with that increased the amount that of gluten in all of, in the grains. And so when we have wheat in particular, wheat has a lot of gluten. It had gluten before. It is a poison to us, gluten is, but at low levels, we're able to process it well. But because of all these new grains that are out and these genetically modified new wheat, to bring us a higher quantity of food, what's happened is that also the gluten levels have gone up. So it's up too high for many bodies to process properly. And so therefore, we get the detrimental effects, or those other people get detrimental effects of it. So when we actually go to Pakistan, like Kirsty, my daughter Kirsty, has a gluten intolerance. And when she goes to Pakistan, she really likes being there because there's not as much gluten in your wheat as there is here. And she can eat a lot of the bread, maybe not all of it, and maybe not as much as she used to when she was young, but she can certainly eat more there because you don't have all the I don't know what kind of genetically modified food you have there, and I'm heard is practically nothing. So she finds it a real treat to go to Pakistan because she can eat her bread again. So food allergies is another one, and this will affect mood and behavior. Just remember, it also be very dangerous, and this is why when they started processing peanuts differently, all of a sudden we had a huge rise of allergies here in North America to peanuts, and so it's at a point now where we're not allowed to bring peanuts in many schools, and in most schools, if not all schools, because they can get anaphylactic shock from this allergy, and that means that everything closes. All their lungs, all the trachea, everything closes because it's all swollen, and so you can't breathe. And so this is why we have what's called EpiPens for a lot of kids now, because food allergies have just gone crazy these days. And that can affect mood and behavior. And if you have mood and behavior, once again, affected, it affects the ability to learn, and that affects your scores. Okay, so sugar is the last big thing I wanted to talk about here, and sugar. Um, sugar talked about in the brain, excess sugar impairs both our cognitive skills and our self-control. So sugar has drug-like effects in the reward center of the brain and can produce addiction-like effect. So even a single instance of elevated glucose in the bloodstream can be harmful to the brain, resulting in slowed cognitive functions and deficits in memory. So even some research suggests that high sugar consumption causes inflammation in the brain, leading to memory difficulties. So Coke is liquid sugar. So if you want your child to have good memory, don't give them too much sugar. If you want their slowed cognitive functions, that means you want them to be slow with the way that they're thinking, give them lots of sugar. They're not going to be faster at thinking. It's going to affect them, period. And there's so much out there. And I'm just saying this because it's, it affects, yes, it brings on type 2 diabetes, it brings on, but it's actually even before that, it has had its effect cognitively for the children. And if you have that effect, you've just put them at a disadvantage. And we talk all about how we get more tutors, how do we get them to do better on this test or better on that test. We talk about giving them better clothes maybe or looking good. And then we give them this junk and it's just putting them in a disadvantage. So please think about this, people, because it makes a huge difference. High quality food, you're going to have kids who think better, work better, interact better, and are happier at the end. And that's it for this.
Wow, we have a lot of questions. So,
Good. Oh, yeah, I see them all now coming in. Great.
so let me start from, since you were talking about sugar, let me start from that. So Aisha Khattak is saying that my daughter has a sweet tooth. I think Aisha's daughter is 7. So she's saying, what about sugar from fruits? And there was another question about what about brown sugar as opposed to white sugar?
Okay. So it used to be that brown sugar was not processed as much as white sugar. What is happening in many parts of the world now is that brown sugar is white sugar that has some molasses poured over it. So you're getting the white sugar in many parts of the world. Now, I don't know in everywhere, and I don't know all the sugar manufacturing is just what I heard. And I thought, that's interesting. That's probably why brown sugar tastes different to me now than it did when I was younger, because I thought they've changed the process. So that's one thing. The other thing in terms of brown sugar and white sugar is it's still sugar. It's like it's that high intense, too concentrated for your brain. Your brain has a hard time with it no matter what. So even with fruit, you don't have fruit all day. You have it at specific times. The thing about fruit is that it brings other nutrients that you can't get with other foods. So fruits are important to have, but then again, you don't have your whole meal as all fruits. So reduce the amount of sugar, give other things that don't have much sugar, and you'll find that you're going to feel much better. Your brain, you're going to crave the sugar. And what really happens when you have a lot of sugar is that you're actually, and this is, I didn't talk about this is about your gut. And there's so much more research now happening about your gut, your intestines, and what's happening in there. And when you increase sugar, you get the bad bacteria and the bad fungus that grows in there. And that fungus, if it doesn't have that sugar, it actually starts starving. So it sends out these signals and these chemicals through your bloodstream up to your brain. And when it gets to your brain is thinking, I have to eat sugar. I'm craving sugar. And it's really this fungus that's craving the sugar because it doesn't want to die. Okay. And we don't realize how how much this is impacting us. And this is why actually doctors now are looking at the gut so much more. And this is also why it's important to have a variety of foods and not just one food or another. So the variety of flora basically growing in your gut. And that variety of flora, this bacteria and other things, they send out different messages. If you have good food, they send out good messages and good chemicals to your brain and to the rest of your body that you can use in a good way. When you feed it too much sugar, you've got this fungus which is growing and loving it. And if you don't have enough, it sends these chemicals up to your brain and says, bring in more sugar. I don't care how bad it is to you, but I like it because I live on this. So that's why you have the craving after you start to decrease your sugar intake, because it's sending these up really strong. So if you get through that craving time, you'll find that you won't crave it anymore. And you'll be a lot happier and a lot more energetic without the sugar. So I don't know. Did I answer the question? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But what about fruits? So she wanted to know that is sugar from fruits
It's fine as long as you don't have too much. I think, the general rule is variety and a good food, high nutrient food with variety. Fruits have not high nutrients. They've got a lot of nutrients in them. So that's why you take the fruits. And you need a little bit of sugar somewhere, but don't have whole meals of fruit, and don't constantly just bring in the fruit as a snack. You can have even vegetables as a snack instead, and things that don't have such high levels of sugar.
Okay. We have a really good question from Sadia Latif. So this is a huge thing in Pakistan. Since lunch is not served in the school, the mothers have to send a lunchbox. And the problem with that is that you limit it, because obviously it has to be food that will stay okay for 2-3 hours in a lunchbox. So Sadia wants to know that what snacking options do you recommend in the lunchbox? Like, what is a good thing to put in the lunchbox for a preschooler?
Okay, so a little bit of fruit would be nice for them. It gives them some of the other vitamins that they need. If you've got, here in Canada, we would put cheese in because we love our cheese here, and we have very different cheese than you do there. And that has a good set of, it has protein in it. That's why we've got it. Nuts are good. Vegetables, if you've got carrots or celery or other, you've got cauliflower there. Lots of cauliflower that you've got there. You can put bits of that in there. You can also put in on the side, give them a little dip to dip it in so it has a little bit more flavor. And in that dip, it could be olive oil, a little bit of vinegar, and maybe a couple of spices that they like. And then they'll want to eat all of that. Crackers are good as well, because that fills them up a little bit as well. And if you've got some cold meats or something, that's also nice. There in Pakistan, a snack even could be some lentils and some dal, if they don't mind having it cold. And also naan. Give them some naan and some. So I'm thinking of chickpeas, anything with chickpeas. Chickpeas has high protein and lots of nutrients in it too. So they're really good for them. And there's so many different things. One of the things I've noticed from when I was growing up, here in Canada, by the way, we're not given food for lunches. In the US, it's a norm. Here in Canada, you can opt for it, but most kids have to bring their lunch in many of the schools. But
you're not served a lunch in school?
No. So our parents have to do all that, yes. Okay, so I think one of the things that changed, when I was young, we used to have sandwiches all the time. And even for snacks, it was another sandwich. And now, and don't forget drinks as well, and water. You can just have water if they want. But now what's happening is kids will have a lot of leftovers from the meal before. So, yeah.
Okay. So sandwiches, okay.
Yeah.
So there's a question about how much sugar intake is healthy, or are you advocating zero sugar policy for kids under 10?
For kids under 10, well, you're going to have a little bit of sugar in everything that you eat, because there's actually sugar. If you look in all the crackers that aren't sweet cookies, there's actually sugar in there. There's sugar in fruit, like it was said. There's even sugar in vegetables. So zero sugar, when you're talking about white sugar, that's something very different than zero sugar. So try and substitute. You can do baking. You can substitute with applesauce to bring in some sugar, but it's healthy. It's not too much. I think what the idea here is, limit it and have it at appropriate times. So if it is like someone's birthday and you want to celebrate, have a little bit of sugar and enjoy it, but it shouldn't be a celebration every single day. And teach your child how to be disciplined about this, and how to recognize good food and not good food. That's more important. And so if you are doing that and you're looking at nutrient-rich food and you're concentrated on that, then the sugar actually doesn't come into the equation, because it's sort of a treat once in a while, but that's it. I don't think you have to say totally out, but it is an appropriateness, and that's what you need to teach your kids.
Okay. We have a question about water. Kulsum wants to know, and what about water intake? Because kids drink water only when they're kind of having food, especially in the winter, because we don't feel thirsty enough. So how much water is a must, and what are good ways to get them to drink water?
Okay, so having that constant water keeps up energy for sure. Okay, so I think it's more about having that constant little sips, and then they can get through about 4 glasses a day. They say for adults it's supposed to be 8. But my cousin, who is she's got a postdoctoral science in biology and everything, and she's saying, you know what? There's actually the research that they did really wasn't full research they did to say that you need 8 glasses of water a day. She said, in fact, you don't. So, the debate is out there still, is all I'm going to say right now. And she's saying that you drink when you're thirsty, and your body will tell you, as long as, if you are eating a healthy food, your body will tell you what it needs. If you've got it so it's so unbalanced and you've introduced sugars and a whole bunch of other things that you shouldn't be eating, well, then your body won't know what it needs. And that's I think a big, it's not a secret, but it's a big secret in a way. And to remember that, and to teach your kids that, and also remember that they're getting, when they have fruit, when they have vegetables, they're getting water there as well. And when they're eating some of your foods with like dal, there's water in there too. So keep an eye on it. And if they get a little lethargic, it could be because they haven't had enough water, but you shouldn't be just trying to force 8 glasses of water into them. I think that's my message. At least that's how I take it.
So there's a question about stevia, and earlier there was a question about the keto diet. So the keto diet is like it's very popular in Pakistan. We talk about it all the time, and it's known to improve attention. So have you ever heard of the keto diet being given to children because they are suffering from attention? And then Ayesha also wants to know that, the stevia that is used in keto diet, can we give stevia to children just because we don't want to give them sugar?
Okay, so for the keto diet, basically that's for high fats. And that's because the brain needs some, it actually works off of it. It likes fats, okay, and also protein. And I didn't talk a bit about that. So when a brain is damaged, you need to fix it. And that diet, the keto diet, is good for damaged brains. And it's good for a certain amount of time, from what I have read, but be careful how long you stay on it. and be very careful about introducing this to children unless there's like they've had a concussion or something. That's usually where the brain damage is. My brother-in-law is on a very strict keto diet because he had a really bad concussion, and this is actually helping his brain, and he's able to now function properly, and that's because of his diet and some other things he did. But the stevia, actually, I've grown plants of stevia, and I love stevia because it can give you that sweetness instead. It can be a bit bitter too, and so you have to sort of play around with it. So natural stevia is great; it's good for you, and I don't know about kids under 10 for that. You'd have to look that up and ask a doctor. I didn't know there was a problem. There may be, but please don't take it from me. Okay. All right. Ayesha.
So another questions become really important under COVID is the number of meals that children should have. So I know like mothers have started complaining about how since the kids are home, they're always cooking. So they're cooking breakfast and then they're making a snack and then they're doing dinner and then they're lunch and then there are more snacks and then there's dinner. So what is better for children? Like 3 meals or 5 meals, or I've even read 7 meals. So or like the opposite, like 2
Okay.
meals.
So when my son was in high school, it was like, I don't know how many meals. It just kept going. Okay, again, your child will say, I'm hungry. And I think, again, it goes back to if you have nutrient-rich meals, you don't need too much food. If you have it regularly, it's like every, so many hours, 3 hours, 2.5 hours. For some kids, they just need it more. Their metabolic rate is way up there. So they're going to look for some food a little bit more often. And for those people, it is critically important that you have nutrient-rich foods to slow it down a little bit so that they don't have to keep eating every hour, right? So it really depends on the child. I think one thing that's important is that if you feed your child, and it's the same with adults, if you eat too much in one meal, your stomach stretches, then you get hungrier the next meal and you want more and more food in one meal. So smaller meals, and this is why they say for people trying to lose weight, smaller meals regularly keeps things going through your brain, and that's really more of what you want to do. So I don't know that there's any specific number. Some kids will need more than others. It's just every so many hours, like every 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, young children in particular, they need it quite often. And if they're growing fast, if they're going through a growing spurt, then they're going to need it even more. Now, the other thing is right before a growing spurt is when they really too, because right before a growing spurt, what they've already done is actually the spurt themselves inside, all their organs have grown, and then their body grows to the size of the organs next. And that's why you have spurts. And it's not really, their whole body inside is grown, and then all of a sudden the body gets there. So,
okay, so there's a question from Ispa on this idea of should water be had during a meal, after a meal, before a meal? What do you recommend in terms of drinking water and meals?
Okay, so it's I've heard everything. Okay, and I don't know the answer to that. When my children were really young, it was my children are they were saying that you don't drink water during meals, and now I'm hearing, well, you have to drink water during meals, and it's all over. I don't know that I really don't know if it makes a difference. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question about fasting. So obviously, right now, everybody talks about fasting as an intermittent fasting, but in the Muslim religion, obviously, Ramadan is a very important month, and we, like children as young as 6, 7, keep like a couple of fasts at least. Some keep more, and then the idea of also fasting on Mondays and Thursdays. So what is your general opinion on the idea of fasting strictly from like a nutritional point of view? Is it a good idea? Should children be going to school if they're fasting, or does the body just get used to fasting if they're fasting like twice a week?
I think you have to be very careful with children because they are developing, and you have to ensure that all their organs and the different parts of the body have the nutrients that it takes. And nutrients don't just come and go. It should be a constant in. And if the nutrients aren't there when they need them, then those cells are going to suffer. So it's not just about, well, I'm going to give you nutrients this time, this day, and then not nutrients other days. And I'll catch up with all the nutrients. It's not about catching up when children are growing. It's about being there at the time that cell needs it so that it can function properly and it can grow properly, and it won't be damaged. The DNA or RNA won't be damaged. That's really important. So having said that, fasting, I mean, there's a lot said about it in terms of cleaning out your body and giving your body a rest from all the food, and so there's a lot. Even a lot of Christians I know really believe in fasting too. So it's not just the Muslim faith, and so there's got to be a reason. People are seeing the difference. They're feeling the difference. I know people who say it's a huge difference. All I say for children is be very careful and ensure that if you are fasting during the day, like during Eid, um, and if you're fasting during that time and then you eat at night, make sure when they eat, it's not a whole bunch of sugary stuff, which is what they're probably going to want to go to right away. So have that good nutrient-rich food ready for them, and in the morning before they leave, have that. I'm also a little concerned about water and dehydration, especially if it's during the summertime and the heat. You've got to keep that water going. And actually, that's why I didn't talk about before. In the summertime, water is so important. So make sure the kids have it, even if they're not feeling thirsty, because they could actually be really dehydrated and past that point. And it gets hot there, really hot there.
It does. Absolutely. It does. Okay, so we have a question about, sorry, I'm just scrolling up because there were a lot. Yeah, about chocolates. So, chocolates are often used as a treat. Like I know with Sharan, if I have to make him do writing, I need to bribe him to make him sit down. So, like how, but chocolate is like dark chocolate is actually considered good in some ways, but then chocolate's also sugar. So do you think chocolate as a treat or like chocolate milk as a treat is a good idea, or is that the beginning of like disaster?
Okay, beginning of disaster. Again, if you go back to the general rule is have a variety of foods, and your body needs nutrients from all these different things. Cocoa can provide some good nutrients to the body, and that's why they're saying 70% and above. Some say 80% is good for you. It does have the sugar in it, so you just have to be careful. It's all disciplined. It's, you don't just eat a whole box of chocolates to yourself. That's the problem. Having one or two chocolates now and again is not a problem. Do chocolates have an effect on kids? Definitely. It has an effect on adults, so it's going to have an effect on kids. It has caffeine and it has sugar. Cocoa has a lot of caffeine. It also has some good nutrients in it too. So the caffeine's going to affect the kids. The sugar's going to affect the kids. It is. And that's why you teach kids the discipline and just to have one or two, and then, maybe the next day or next week, they can have another couple. So I think one of the things I just want to mention right now is that there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who researched into this, but there's a lot of research these days, and there's so much research. It's almost too much research for us. So we're bombarded with all this stuff. And, it's tiring reading it all. And as a parent, you're trying to figure out, well, what's the best? Which way do I go? And that's why I say, go back to the basics. Stick with that. Kids do need water. Kids do need good nutrients. I gave you some examples of good nutrients. Make sure that's there and avoid having the sugary stuff. You don't have to 100% avoid it. Be disciplined and have it so that the kids know that this is maybe something nice every now and again. You may find that the kids may not even want it if they're not addicted to it. If they haven't learned that sugar tooth, if they've got that sugar tooth, you'll give them one, they don't want any more. They will say, I don't want any more. And that goes with tea as well. And even, that powdered milk in Pakistan, when you put that into the tea, it's sweet. I'm not used to that much sweetness. I find it almost too sweet, just to let you know how sweet that is. And if you're not used to having sugar, that's sweet.
Okay. So last question. We won't be able to get to all of them. It's actually a question that brings us back to the beginning. Since you spoke about a healthy brain and how like good nutrition leads to a healthy brain. So Maimuna's question is, what is a healthy brain? Like, how do you define a healthy brain? How do you know if your child has a healthy brain? Like, what do you really mean by the good health of a brain?
Good question. Okay. So a healthy brain is, you can tell, well, a healthy brain is a brain that's functioning well and isn't stressed. Okay. So that's just like, that's basic. But let's go to the more advanced, which is what I think you're looking for. And that's why it's such a good question. How do you tell if it's a healthy brain? So to tell if it's a healthy brain, you want to look at the mood of the child. If they're up and down all the time, that's not a healthy brain. Okay. If they're depressed, something's going on in the brain. And so they need to improve the neurotransmitters. It may be something else that's going on. And so why is that depleted? It could be genetic. It may not be. It could be just based on the foods that they're eating. A healthy brain, so that's the moods, it's behaviors. Moods affect behaviors. So if you're in a good mood, you're going to have good behavior. And also a healthy brain means that you can focus for long periods of time. If a child can't focus, it could be simply that you need to improve that brain and give it better nutrients so that it's good. Now, exercise also helps the brain too, because it releases the chemicals that your brains need and it feeds off of too. So that's why it's critically important. And I've got a big article on walking, and walking itself, an article about this big that was sent to me. And I thought, wow, that's really fascinating. Just even the motion of it, it actually activates your brain in a different way. So that helps bring a healthy brain. So kids who want to exercise, who are happy to do it, they're happy to be with others, they want to learn, they can focus, and they're not moody, that's a sign of a healthy brain. Hope that helps.
Yes, that really helps. So everyone, we are out of time and we will have to say goodbye to Kim. I know there are lots more questions, but it's hard to get through so much in 1 hour. So we'll be taking a break for New Year's and we will be back on the 7th of January. Meanwhile, all of you, we would love to know what topics you're interested in. So you can see the Spirit of Math email address up there. And we'd love to know what topics you're interested in 2021, because the new year is going to bring new challenges for all parents out there. So it'll be great to know what topics you want Kim to talk about and where you want her expertise. Kim, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I also wanted to say, I think the next one, what we were thinking of doing, and I'd like to know if people would like this too, is to talk about division, like a math topic. And so division is like, just how do you do division or long division? If you don't want that, that's fine too. But that's what I was thinking, that some people were asking for some math topics before.
Yeah.
How do I teach these different things? And I wondered about whether we should do a lesson, and you'd like to hear that. So if you would, it's that's up to you. Is like I'd like to hear back too from you. Okay.
Yes. So guys, do send your feedback into the email address. It will be great to hear back from you. And Kim, Merry Christmas. I hope you have a great Christmas and a great New Year. And maybe when we meet in January, half the world would be vaccinated. I know that's wishful thinking.
I know that's not going to happen in Canada, but
I don't know if it's ever going to happen in Pakistan. Right now, like we're trying to convince people that the vaccine is not out to kill them.
oh
So
yeah,
the
okay.
anti-vaccine lobby is pretty strong, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we will defeat the virus.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I
Thank
hope
you
you have
very much.
a great and well
And
deserved.
thank you, and happy New Year's to everyone out there too. Okay, and thank you again. Take care. Bye.